Hi, everybody. Welcome to Milestone webinar. Today, we're going to talk about using Cursor and how to measure the different code gen tools in the engineering industry. My name is Liad Elidan. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Milestone, and excited to show you what we do in Milestone and our progress in the measurements of Gen AI in the industry. Okay, so for agenda today, we're going to hit it off with a bit of discussions about codegen and vibe coding. What's the main differences? And also, we're going to map a bit the market with the different vendors and who to look for and some of the exciting new features. After that, we're going to talk about how you can measure the real impact of Gen AI in the organization, in your team, in the enterprise, and with specifically the milestone framework where we look at adoption, we look at efficiency, which is driving productivity, and we're making sure that both the adoption and productivity are leading to top code quality based of the Gen AI codegen assistant. So let's talk a bit about the market. You can see the Gartner report here. As you all understand, if I think about a year ago, 3 out of 10 big organizations would consider thinking of adopting any codegen tools. Today, it's 10 out of 10, and it's more than one vendor. The industry has been growing very, very fast. There are many from YC Combinators all the way to the top dog, GitHub, hence Microsoft Copilot. The industry is growing with new codegen, agents, vibe coding, and so on. I think the biggest challenge for all engineering leaders is to understand which tools should they use and how you can actually assess the productivity gains of those tools, because everyone afraid that their competitors are going to use those tools and your R&D are not, right? And I think this will grow fast as we continue. And specifically, engineering and Gen AI is one of the most evolved industries in that conversation. Now, by the way, I don't know if you've seen today ChatGPT. I actually haven't checked if it's up yet, but having many problems. And this just shows you the demand that is growing on all those kind of platforms, OpenAI, Anthropic, and so on. All of them are in this bar fight of who's going to be the code gen of engineering and across the industry leader. Let's talk about codegen versus vibe coding. Don't worry, I'm not going to go too much into vibe coding, but it's crucial to understand what our engineers are looking at when they're writing code. So let's start from the left. I listed here what I view as some of the top 8 codegen tools out there. So from the top left, Cursor, Augment Code, Windsurf, Tab9, GitHub Copilot, Junie, by JetBrains, Codo, and Cloud Code. Those are the top codegen tools. While on the right, we have Lovable, Bolt, V0 by Vercel, and Base 44. Those are the top dogs as we see today. There are many others that I didn't mention here, and some of them are really strong as well. But each one of them have their unique opportunity for your engineering team. Let's look at this map here, right? And I know there's a typo in the programmers. Actually, this is not mine. You can see the credit on the bottom left. I kind of laughed when I read on the bottom right, no code, idiots, beginners. So let's just a line about it. On the bottom left, it's IDEs. On the top, no code, right? So IDEs, obviously, engineer write code in IDEs. And you can see how the trend goes all the way from Base 44 Lovable to GitHub Copilot and so forth. Now, there is a question whether Cursor, Windsurf, Copilot, and so forth, will they move across the map as the time goes? We'll talk about one of the newest features, which is agent mode that many of those vendors providing. Is agent mode now putting them a bit more to the right? It's a big question that we are all trying to understand. And I think we'll probably learn in the next few months. So agent mode. What is agent mode? Agent mode is right now the hottest feature in the codegen market, actually. I listed the 7 vendors who are selling them. And agent mode allows the engineers in their IDEs and workspace to essentially write text and receive and get an agent that autonomously go and do tasks that if before in GitHub Copilot or Cursor you would use autocomplete or chat, here this agent will go and do things. Most of those agents are currently in beta. We in Milestone, we haven't seen much market traction on an enterprise level using them because it's still relatively alpha beta-ish. But I believe that agents will be more robust as the time will go by. And this will be the movement from a hybrid AI human writing code to a more human running multiple fleets of agents. And you can actually run those things and trial them out with all those vendors right now. So what is the real difference in when we talk about enterprise level coding or big companies coding between Cogent to Vibe coding? Let's start from Cogent, right? So Cogent is, as it says, it's in IDEs and in code and so forth. Those tools are being sold to developers, mainly developers. We're starting to see some other departments using Cursor and so on, but I always hear some complications about it. Code-based understanding, which is context. Cogent relies heavily on usage of context of your existing repositories and existing workspace. And this allows those tools to actually add layers of complexity to the code they're writing. So you'll get actually more interesting logic, more deeper, complex analysis and code being written out of those tools. And as we said, developer focused. This is for experienced people. I won't expect product managers, depends how technical they are, but even marketing people writing code tomorrow on Cursor or Augment. But I will see them doing vibe coding. So vibe coding is 0 to app in minutes. No coding required in most of them. In some of them, you can debug and you can add your own code and so on. But most of them are no coding at all. It allows you full stack generation from zero, some of them using specific DBase like Supabase and so forth. And it allows you this almost garden wall system to create apps. And today in enterprises, we and Milestone and myself, we don't see it becomes that fast as, oh, you can vibe code a real feature to a real customers in a real enterprise. But it allows you to build prototypes and demos fairly fast, which is something that in Cursor, you'll need to know what you're doing. In Copilot, you'll need to run a React app and then start coding, right? And here you can actually ask in text to build things and it will do it relatively quickly and with not a lot of coding experience. So let's focus for the rest of this webinar on Cogent, okay? And let's talk about the top 8 tools in the market. So we all know that GitHub Copilot is the top dog. I was actually myself a user of GitHub Copilot before the ChatGPT era in November 22. And, I remember I was super excited about it back in the day. Since then, all those vendors that you see here, each one either have their unique set of features or a pretty general feature. So all of them today offer auto-completion, right, and chat. But for example, Augment have their very unique, I would say, remote agent. Cursor are renowned for their unique IDE user experience, right? We have Tab9. Tab9 are really known for code from the terminal now, right? Kodo specifically have unique features in the world of merging and PRs, okay? And right now, and if I can sum it up, we see a huge trend being done by Cursor in the industry, especially in the enterprise as well, which is surprising. They fundraise a lot of money, around $1 billion, which will sure push them forward. And I think Windsurf being bought by OpenAI, we don't know how it will impact the industry. Anthropic just announced the other day they're not going to support Windsurf because it's going to be bought by OpenAI. We are not sure how it's going to impact Windsurf. So this is really things you should consider when you're trialing those vendors, because some of them are using AWS, GCP, Azure, and so on. And this might impact in the near future the way you're operating with those vendors. So how do we measure Gen AI? In Milestone, we look at measuring Gen AI in 3 pillars, okay? We have the first pillar called adoption, second one called productivity, and third, quality. In adoption, we want to understand who is using the Gen AI tools. And Gen AI tools, to be clear, we're talking about only code gen. We're not talking about vibe coding in this session. Who is using in Cursor, in what team they're using Cursor, and what team is using Copilot? What individual contributors are actually using 3 type of vendors, and to what means? So where is their adoption problem? So if that team is adopting heavily, 10 out of 10, is there a team over here that 0 out of 5? No one is using Gen AI tools. And this is a problem. And we want to pinpoint by adoption exactly who's using where and to all granularities in the organization. Let's talk about productivity and efficiency, right? So we have those classic DORA and SPACE, surveys and so on, engineering metrics from various companies that sell them. We have in Milestone usage of some of those classic metrics and some unique metrics. What we do specifically is we're allowing the automatic attribution to what has been made by Gen AI. And this is something that is not simple to do, and we are first in the market to it. We'll talk about it a bit later. Code impact. How much of our code is Gen AI blended and impacted? Let's talk quantitative before we go to quality. Is it 50%? Is it 5%? Okay. Adoption would impact trend over time. This means is the usage is growing by people, but also the blend and impact of Gen AI on our code base is growing at the same time. We don't want to buy many licenses of many vendors and seeing that it doesn't affect our code base at all. We want to see adoption that is growing with impact on our engineering. The last bit is quality. So let's say we got adoption, people are using it. We see some productivity gains. Wow, we are delivering more features than usual. I'm being exaggerating simple for that. Now, do we actually have more bugs? What if we deliver more features and we have the same amount of bugs as before? That's a positive thing, right? Is our code stable? Do we actually churn the code in a bigger sense or a lower? Do we delete more code that is being made by Gen AI or not? How is it impacting our code base? And time to market. Is our business needs being met? Do we deliver more features? Do we solve bugs faster? And this, when we're talking about quality in that sense, we want to see not just PRs, but we want to see Jira tickets are being done and being, kind of finished from in progress to done across the boards, across the organization. Okay, those 3, adoption, productivity, and quality, are the pillars to understanding Gen AI in your organization. Let's start with Gen AI adoption. Okay, one of the challenges today, especially when we spoke about the different coding vendors and Gen AI code gen vendors, each week we see new features. And relatively today, there is no stickiness. So your engineer can use a specific extension, a Copilot extension, and tomorrow they might use another one. Specifically with Windsurf and Cursor, it's more complicated because those are unique IDs. But the concept of being able to switch between platforms and Gen AI vendors is relatively simple. And because of that, we need the ability to measure the different tools because our engineers might use different tools and decide differently. And in order to understand what is working in our organization, we need to have a comparable analysis and also an industry benchmark to those. You can see here on the right some widgets from Milestone. So on the top left, we can see Gen AI adoption across all tools in an organization. And on the right, we took as an example, but we support all of them, of Copilot, Cursor, and Windsurf, and we can see the exact amount of adoption rate for each one. What's unique about the way we view adoption rate in Milestone, we're not just dependent of getting activity from Cursor, from Copilot, of how many people are using it. We're correlating it with actual commit and PR activity that being impacted and assisted by those Gen AI tools. On the bottom left, we spoke about code blend before. This is seeing how much of your code base in the organization, team, group, and so on is actually being code blended with Gen AI. And looking at it a bit deeper, here is a code blend impact by the 3 different vendors, kind of zooming in. 20% of the commits are impacted by Copilot. This means that in those different timeframes, the stability and change of impact by Copilot varies very differently. And we actually see it a lot because of this shift of vendors in the enterprises. We see many enterprises try different vendors, and then the commit impact are changed. But we also see kind of this driving into consolidating which vendor are we using. Are we a cursor company? If so, we need to see that level of commits that are being blended with cursor going higher, okay? And that's a main key to discovering how people are using those different vendors and tools. So let's talk about a challenge, right? Your organization uses various tools. Use GitHub, maybe Bitbucket, maybe GitLab, Azure DevOps on the Git side. Maybe they use Jira or Asana. They might use different HR platforms like Workday, HiBob, Bamboo, or maybe it's, in some CSV in the organization. And it's really hard to understand from Copilot and the other vendors, GenAI vendors, what teams are actually using it, because you don't want to keep updating the teams in GitHub and in Jira and so forth. In Milestone, what we do is we manage this in a one-stop shop. We actually manage the HR in our platform, and we're allowing your organization to access the different kind of granularities, team, group, site, business unit, with all those adoption. So in that use case, Team Alpha and Team Beta, you can see how much Team Alpha is actually growing adoption on a Cursor, while Team Beta is actually lowering adoption on GitHub Copilot. And you can see them different granularities, 7 days, 30, and customs, of course. Okay, let's go to the next pillar, Gen AI productivity. So the industry, and we touched it a bit before, the industry and pre-Gen AI era was leaning toward this DORA space, cycle time, MTTRs. They're kind of KPIs to measure engineering. This is, by the way, by itself, a very controversial metrics in the industry. Space are more survey-based. DORA is more shallow, PR, kind of ticketing data oriented. And some organizations are even having a whole internal teams or DevX team to build their own tools. It's really hard to take the Gen AI piece and correlate to all of them, because right now those tools are very separate. Some of them have APIs, some of them have hidden APIs, some of them don't have APIs at all. What we did in Milestone is we built a data lake of all those kind of tools, and we can look at it here. So we have the Git, we have the product management tools, we have the HR data, and now we have the Gen AI data. We're connecting all the dots behind the scenes, and then we're building models on top of it. Because we are gathering deep data, this allows us to calculate some unique metrics. And let's take actually a simple metric for that matter in the webinar, which is cycle time. Okay, cycle time, we can see it here on the top left widget. First commit to merge. Okay, and cycle time could be in progress to done to Jira. It's a very classic, oh, we started working and now we finished a specific task. On the bottom left, we have coding time, pickup time, and review time. You can read in each one what they mean, and all of them are consisting of cycle time. What we're able to do in Milestone, we're able to show you specifically which PRs were Copilot or Cursor or Windsurf impacted or not, and how does PRs that are assisted by each one of those vendors, how their cycle time looks like. And in this example, and again, all those examples, we're working with all those Gen AI vendors. We don't have a favorite to say that. So this is just an example here on the right. We can see that actually in this organization, working with Windsurf, the cycle time is super low compared to other vendors as Cursor and Copilot. And in Milestone, we're able to attribute it because we can tell you all the way to a commit level if it's GenAI impacted or not. Let's look, and now, we live in big organizations and we want to see fast what are the top and what are the bottom. Now, I have to say, top and bottom doesn't mean really bad to great, because it really depends. Cycle time on a super back-end sophisticated logic team could be very high, while a fast, rapid change in React front-end team might be a very fast cycle time. But you can see those teams that adopted GenAI and see how their cycle time looks like and which one is the lowest and shortest with GenAI. So let's now dig even deeper. And now we double clicked on a specific team. Let's call it Alpha Team. And on the bottom, you see on the gray lines over here, though this is the average cycle time, and the y-axis is the amount of PRs that are being assessed by Copilot. We can actually see that as the percentage of Copilot impacted PRs are growing, the cycle time is actually lowering for the entire range. So just to be clear, we have the total amount of PRs. Some of them are Copilot impacted and some of them are not Copilot impacted. Here you can see when it's at the peak, the most Copilot impacted cycle time have lowered. And this is really interesting because it means that people ship faster and merge faster code. And that leads us to quality. What is GenAI quality? GenAI quality is trying to understand how is our organization and code base is impacted by this code gen tools. Release durability is an example. So let's take the last example. People are shipping more code when they're GenAI assisted. Does it mean that we'll have less bugs? Does it mean that people will churn it? What if I deliver 5 times more features, but every time I deliver them with Cursor, people are actually need to review it more time and ask me to fix a bug and so forth? What if the other way around? I'm using Augment, I'm delivering way more features and I have less bugs. And this is exactly trying to understand release durability. Tests. Do we write the same amount of tests when we deliver code-gen impacted features or not? And here in Milestone, we're able to measure how many unit tests are being delivered with code-gen or not. Let's talk about it. So on the left, you can see the different unit tests being pushed by different vendor, Copilot, Cursor, Windsurf, and none. And really interesting here in Windsurf, and I swear it wasn't on purpose that Windsurf is the best, but you can see that in Windsurf, in that specific example, there are more coverage by unit tests. Now, I will say, quality depends on context and also depends on what teams uses what vendors. If you have a team that uses only Copilot and a team that uses only Cursor, you'll see different numbers. But we want to understand, and all of those tools are dependent on context. And we are seeing more and more enterprises leaning to a specific tool that fits their needs, where their quality is higher with that specific vendor in each area of their system. On the right, we look at code durability. Milestone have a unique way to measure code durability, is how much code survive in production. We can see the different rework threshold. Rework is any code that being changed within 30 days since it's in production. We can see the shift in those different tools. And all those very unique metrics are IP of Milestone, and we're able to do it because we have access to the repos, to the code gen APIs, to the Jira tickets, and so forth. So let's talk about Jira tickets and GenAI. I mentioned here Jira because it's the most popular platform, but there are many other tools like Asana, Monday, Fibery, and more. Here, measuring quality can be inferred directly from the product management platform. Most organizations work in sprints, work in agile, maybe it's a waterfall, but we can measure a story if it's Copilot impacted or a defect. Is the defect impacted by GenAI or not? We can even tell you whether a bug was being done by GenAI impacted code by looking at the PR and where it came from beforehand. Then you can start measure things like bug density and see if there is a difference in the different PRs. Also test coverage on the Jira tickets themselves. Generated code ratio. How much is the code being generated by GenAI or not in relation to Jira tickets, to PM? Bug density by tool. So we can start to count the amount of bugs we get by tool, which is a different kind of layer of view that we can look at the different vendors, GenAI vendors we're using. And also the test coverage, which could be very different between the different tools. So I want to show you a bit of how our platform looks in real for the next couple of minutes in a short demo. Okay, so this is the Milestone platform. I'm going to show a quick demo just touching the GenAI pieces. We have many other pieces as well. Here in the Copilot dashboard, we can select different times and we can compare different tools. In the demo here, you can either select Copilot, Cursor, or Codo. We support all the other tools mentioned in the webinar as well. Here in that example on the left, you can actually pick different granularities. It could be a product, it could be a group, it could be a team, it could be even a repo. And where we're looking at product, I can pick a different product. And let's say this product is being, total developers are working on that specific product. And we can see there are GenAI users, which in this case is Copilot, 9 of 10. 9 out of 10 are using Copilot and adopting in that time frame. On the top right, we have code commits, test commits, and PR reviews. How many of them are actually affected and impacted by Copilot? We can see the names of the users themselves. If I click this button here, I can see all the names of the users. Of course, for the demo, it's fake names. Here in this graph, we can see the commit ratio of Copilot impacted code or not, and we can actually see the amount of them. If I click here, you can literally see how many Copilot impacted commits and non-Copilot commits each person had. Here, let's talk about usage distribution. What's unique about usage distribution? It's talking about how often are people using the specific GenAI vendor. In that case, it's Copilot. And you can see the formula for that here. So in that example, in that specific product, we have 2 regular users, 4 often, 1 occasional, 2 rare, and 1 is not using. If I click, I can see which person in what category. The same thing I can do for different languages. So the platform allows you very, very deep ways to look at those kind of numbers. Let's talk a bit about impact. We spoke about cycle time in the webinar, and here this is an example of how I can view the amount of PRs, in that case 30%, which is 230, compared to 70%, 520, that are not impacted by Copilot. And we can see the difference in the average cycle time. So the average cycle time of the Copilot impacted PR is actually faster. And to be clear here, Milestone does it automatically. We don't need any intervention. We don't need a tag. We automatically can assess whether a commit, PR, a Jira ticket is Copilot impacted or not. You can even click that button and see the actual PR themselves with their correlated cycle time and whether they're impacted or not. You would be able to click and view the Jira URL, the Git URL, and more. To show you some other KPI capabilities we have, so we have a thing we call productiveness score. Productiveness score can be affected by GenAI. In Milestone, you can customize the different KPIs you want to view and associate them with GenAI. Here, show Copilot impact, the same as we spoke about cycle time. But you can do the same on a different, unique set of metrics. We even have metrics like review depth, PR size, Code review impact, how much the code review is being impacted since someone is asking to being reviewed, and whether Gen AI impacted it or not. Things like code longevity, how long, we spoke about refactoring before and code sharing churn. Here we can tell how long does code survive in production with Gen AI or not. So to summarize, we see the market today growing very fast. And as those tools come into the market, those Gen AI tools, we'll need to find new ways to measure them. For example, agent mode that I mentioned before, we'll need now to invent new framework to measure autonomous agents worked by an engineer. And I think this will just grow in the next few months. I hope you enjoyed the webinar with us. Hope to see you again, and feel free to reach out to me personally by email, Liad Elidan at Milestone.ai, in our website for another demo, webinar, and so on. Would love to work and see all of you, and good luck using those CodeGen tools. Goodbye.